Swilan Magovanen, everybody, to another episode of the Lunch Table Podcast with Dylan and Akram. We are reviewing the newest Amazon series, The Rings of Power, based on Tolkien's Lord of the Rings series. I have some thoughts on it, being a Tolkien fan myself, but Akram, I know you're not like a huge Tolkien fan. I know you played the Shadow of Mordor games, so how did you receive this series?
Yes, well, welcome everybody to our fellowship. I thought this show definitely seemed like it was $154 million worth. I think it was a beautiful show. I even think it kind of outdid the Hobbit series, just how beautiful it was and the locations that they went to. As a novice of Lord of the Rings in general, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fantastical elements. I also enjoyed seeing these characters that I am aware of in their younger, stages of their life. And so, for the most part, I enjoyed it. I know that you maybe have quite a little bit of gripes with it, but let's just get right into it. So, what did you think about the show?
I have a few criticisms, but I think overall I enjoyed the series. I know a lot of people, and Tolkien fans especially, have some major criticisms with it. There's a lot of backlash, and I think for the most part, a lot of it is unwarranted. But I think how I would receive this series, it's definitely Tolkien inspired, but um, there's a few things they change in it, and it feels like a very condensed version of the Silmarillion, kind of. And it leans more towards like the end of the Silmarillion, so because they said this was like the second age, but it's closer to the third age actually. Um, we do see like a couple like familiar faces like Galadriel, Elrond, from the Peter Jackson films, but I think this takes place in a separate canon from those films. So they tried to do their own thing, and I think like you said, like it's visually like stunning, and I could definitely see like they pulled a lot of elements from the books. Uh, they changed a few things, but there are a lot of things that I feel like they captured the essence of it. See, the thing with the books is like the Silmarillion, especially, like it's very like broadly written. So there's like Tolkien like says, "Oh yeah, like Sauron did this," and then he went to war, but he never goes like into detail about certain things. So I feel like they took that and they were like, "Let's make our own kind of like events in between those that aren't written in the book specifically." Um, but the characters I enjoyed, overall, I think Galadriel especially, I think her journey in this series was really, like, inspiring to me. She felt like this kind of, like, Joan of Arc character, like, she goes on this, like, crusade, and so many other characters, like and the Halbrand thing, we'll talk about a little bit. I was a little bit disappointed with, how they revealed his character towards the end, because he was kinda, like, very charming, and I was like, "Oh, he gonna be, like, this kind of, like, heroic character?" But they kinda made him out to be, like, this villain towards the end. But which character stood out to you?
Well, for sure, Galadriel. I love Morphe Clark taking the role of Galadriel. I remember seeing her from Saint Maud. That was my first experience of her acting, and I thought she was brilliant there, and I think she's brilliant here. It's funny because the characters they contrast so much, and to see her in a lighter type of show was awesome. I hope she lived up to expectations because, at least for me, at first glance, I think she did a really great job. And also, I think a lot of people are talking bad about the actor who plays Arendor or Arendir. Um, I kind of get like some of the complaints, not the racist complaints. I think that it's unjustified too. Most of the comments are like the backlash is like about race and stuff like that. I think that's unjustified. One thing I always say to you is like for Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, it's like there's a lot of black actors. Well, where did all the black people go, right? For Lord of the Rings, it makes sense that there weren't any like black actors because the time that Tolkien wrote this. But for the movies, they were really trying to stay true to, I guess, the source material. With this, I don't think it's if anybody's saying that this is kind of like a woke type of show, I don't think that's true whatsoever. I think that it's just the times that we're in, right? And we have to adapt to that. So for the most part, I think actors like Aaron Deere or or that the guy who plays
Sadak.
Sadak Burrows, yeah,
Mhm.
I think they're great. I think they played the roles really well. And for the most part, for the show, being a novice of Lord of the Rings and seeing the show, I really enjoyed it a lot. I don't have many gripes. Some things were a little too obvious, at least for me. I expected some things. But some things I think, for the most part, as our friend Jerome says, it was an ambitious take on the Lord of the Rings franchise in general.
Mhm. Which, I guess, like, story, like, did you kinda, like, follow more? Was it, like, Galadriel's story? Was it, like, the Elrond and Doran kinda story? And then there was, like, kinda like the hobbits with the stranger?
Mm.
Um, which kind of, like, story did you follow the most?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I felt like really attached to actually Arendir's, the elf guy's story
Mhm.
a lot. He was like in a really tough spot, and I just like also the thing with Orin. Actually, the actor Joseph Mal, he was in Game of Thrones, which is really cool. The uncle, Uncle Johnny, that's what I call him. But no, I think for the most part, a lot of people would stick closer to Galadriel's story. I think it's more of like a compelling type of journey that she embarks on because of her brother and stuff. So,
Mhm.
what were your story favorite story arcs? I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I think Arendir was, like, one of my favorite characters, just the way, like, he fights is, like, so graceful and, like, the way he, like, rallied the town. I'm kind of, like, loosely remembering some of the things I read in the book, but I think the performances were great. I did love, like, the Númenórean story and, Elendil, which is the father of, Isildur. I thought he was a great character, and seeing, like, the how Numenor was back then and just, like, their civilization and their culture. Um, it really echoes what we'll see with, like, Gondor and, like, Middle-earth, later, 'cause, Numenor is actually the progenitors to Gondor, so, in the books, if anyone's not familiar with Tolkien lore, Isildur, which was the young guy, he actually cuts the ring off Sauron's finger, and he's supposed to cast it into the fire, but he actually is, corrupted by temptation. But Isildur and, they changed his brother too, so apparently he has a sister in the show. He was supposed to have a brother, and they're actually, like, the founders of, like, Gondor and these great cities in Middle-earth. Um, so in that regard, it was cool to see, like, certain, like, characters, like, their upbringings too, and I did like the Elrond and Doran story. I thought they were just, like, really, like, close bros. I thought their friendship was really sweet and, like, seeing how much, like, um, they kinda, like, went back on, like, their different, like, races just to, like, help each other out. I thought that was really cool. And we see, like, the foundations of, like, what's becoming of, like, the dwarves. So we saw the Balrog, which will eventually, like, fight Gandalf, if anyone remembers the movies. Because the Balrog actually does, like, uh, force the dwarves out of their homes in the mine. So I thought that was a cool little Easter egg that they threw in there. But yeah, um, and then the Halbrand story was really interesting to me. I wasn't, like, a huge fan of how they went about it. So they made Halbrand was eventually, Sauron. They revealed that he's actually Sauron in this series. Um, it's weird because, like, Sauron in the books, he is kinda like this deceiver character. They call him, like, the father of gifts or the lord of gifts or something. They call him, Anatar, when he goes to the elves. But that's he was a different character in this show entirely, but I guess in that way, it kinda did deceive me in a way, so they kinda got, like, a aha moment. But it's a little different from how they go about it in the books. But yeah, what did you think of the reveal?
Yeah, so there was some well, that started with Falco. No, that there was some like little character moments, especially that fight that he had in Numenor. There was something fishy about him, and I always suspected it. Yeah, I guess it was kind of like a gotcha moment. And it's also weird. Do you think it's kind of weird to like go that in depth in the show, at least for Sauron? Because I feel like they're gonna closely. It's kind of gonna seem like a Loki, maybe like that type of like character that you kind of like. He's like suave a little bit, and you kind of ship Galadriel and or Hellbrand at first, and you're like,
Right.
I like this guy. Are you thinking they're gonna try to play with that, where like they want to put the audience in his shoes, like to understand him? I think that'll be maybe disingenuous towards the source material, but what are your
Mhm.
thoughts?
Well, in the books, Sauron at one point did, I guess, kind of like try to repent to the Valar, which are like the gods in Middle Earth. But then he went back to like his old ways. So I feel like it's a trope now where like everyone's trying to like humanize these villains, and Sauron is like the ultimate evil in Middle Earth. So it's weird because like, Tolkien stories feel, like, very cut and dry, like good and evil. So in this show, they kind of, like, explore that there's, like, a gray morality with everyone, even the elves, like, even though they're supposed to be, like, the the blessed ones, as they say, they kind of, like, have, like, a corruption to them too. With Sauron, it's interesting, yeah, they tried to make it seem like, he was kinda, like, repenting for a lot of things they did, but they showed, like, all the fucked up shit he did. He experimented with, like, the orcs and shit. That's why I love that scene with, Orwin or Adar, as they call him. Like, he's supposed to be, like, the villain of this show, but then he's kinda like a sympathetic character because he's like, "Yeah, well, I was trying to save the orcs, from Sauron, actually." So, yeah, what were your thoughts on, like, his character and the orcs?
Well, yeah, I just like his design because you told me some lore about him, and for the most part, I feel like they adapted him pretty good. I also like the little conversation he had with Galadriel. I think that's the most like prominent part of his characters. That whole discussion that they had. He was very frightening. He was kind of like that Negan character, like, "Oh, we're coming in on you and we're gonna fuck you guys up." So yeah, and also I like that he gave mercy to I keep messing up these names, sorry everybody. Arendir. Um,
Mhm,
I like that he gave him mercy too, because I was like, how is he gonna get out of the situation? So in a way, it was like kind of like you're my bitch. I'm gonna let you go or something. So that was like a power move. It was like, damn, this guy's great. So I
mhm,
thought that at first he for sure was gonna meet up with Galadriel or something later on. I didn't expect for everything to like happen so quickly as it did. I wonder if some of the complaints are about pacing, because maybe that could be a problem. Not for me personally, like as much, but let me get your thoughts too, because one thing I noticed is he kind of gave some notion of humanity in the orcs, right? He said that they all have names. So what are your
mhm.
thoughts on that? Did that happen in the books? Like, did they go into that with the orcs?
So the origin of, the orcs, they never really get into it. Well, they kind of do in the Peter Jackson films. Saruman goes a little bit into like their history, like they were once elves. Um, so Sauron was actually not the first Dark Lord of Middle Earth. The one before him was called Melkor or Morgoth. That's what who Galadriel keeps saying Morgoth. He was the first Dark Lord. He is actually one of the Valar or the children of Iluvatar. Um, and he was Sauron's master, and he actually kidnapped some of the elves and kind of like twisted them and corrupted them because he was jealous, like because the elves were kind of like the creation of like Iluvatar, and he kind of wanted to make them like a mockery of that. So he took some of the elves and he actually made them into orcs. So the orcs actually in the books they say like the orcs actually like hated their master like out of fear. So we kinda see that. That's why I say, like, I think some people that are complaining about the lore, like, if you actually, like, go back and read some of it, it actually, like, ties a little bit into this show. Whether it's close or not, there are little, like, snippets that, like, encapsulate some of the themes that, like, Tolkien was playing, like, the origin of, like, evil and stuff. And, yeah, I thought it was cool that we got to see, like, the origin of Mordor and how it was, like, this, like, very, like, naturalistic, like, land. It was, like, very, like, flush green, and there was, like, farmlands and shit. But, through this kind of like, scheme, we see it turn into like the Mordor that we see in the books and the movies. So I thought that was really cool, like concept, like how they kind of like explored like the origin of like Mordor and like how Sauron is eventually gonna take over Mordor and then craft the One Ring in Mount Doom.
That's cool. Yeah. Do you think that the show is a great companion for the movies?
It feels a little bit separated in a way. But it's weird. It's like I would say anyone that is watching this show is either like a huge Tolkien fan or like a huge fantasy fan. They each have their own like little unique quality. I think honestly, like the Peter Jackson films, even though they changed a lot of things, that really encapsulated what the Tolkien feel. Um, but I'd say anyone that's going into this, I think the one virtue of this show is that I actually like went back and reread a lot of the Silmarillion. Um, so I think this show could inspire a lot of people that aren't Tolkien fans or are Tolkien fans to reread the books, right? And then get into the mythology and the lore of it. So that's one strength I will give to this show. Um, but yeah, what were your any thoughts you had on the show?
Well, yeah,
to
again,
wrap up?
coming into this like from a fresh perspective, I really enjoyed it. Like we have shows like The Witcher that I really enjoyed, and we did a review about that. So coming into this, I'm not a big like fantasy guy, but I really enjoy this because it's something. Well, Tolkien wrote, I think it's like a masterpiece, and it's almost like some sort of religious text. It's so heavy with lore; it just feels like he's been writing that for like 100 years. So I get that there might have been like a lot of pressure for the showrunners to get this show going. And thankfully it was $154 million because I could tell in quality it was great. And I think these type of properties you have to make like it has to be expensive because it's so expansive. And for
Mhm.
the most part, it hit all marks for me in terms of like CGI and stuff. I did like the little story arcs because a lot of shows now, I guess that's like the little theme that they going on for a lot of shows. Like actually, the Stranger, which I guess he's Gandalf, reminds me a lot of like Eleven from Stranger Things. He's like,
Mhm.
always to like Harfoots.
Yeah, did you actually prefer this Gandalf or the movie Gandalf?
Oh, well, I think no one can top, the movie Gandalf, right?
Mhm.
I think that actor, Daniel, Wayman, he has a lot of pressure on him as well, but I like that this is like a fresh iteration of Gandalf, right? Just the beginning.
Mhm.
And so I think for the most part he did a great job, especially we see him talking at the end a little bit more. And I don't know, I just found it like a really cute dynamic that he has with the hobbits because you see he's always like involved with hobbits, right, in the movies. And so this
Mhm.
is the start of it. So I thought that was nice. I think the show is like very it's it's a cherry on top, I'd say, hopefully, at least for some people. If it's its own separate thing, then okay, that's great. I guess for the people who hate the show, then it's its own separate thing. That's fine. I would prefer if it's canonical, but I think that
Mhm.
causes problems in terms of how the structure of even the movies and the Hobbit movies. Um, you know, for me, would I consider a companion? I guess maybe because I'm not really like a lore guy of Lord of the
Mhm.
Rings in general. Like I don't care too much about stuff. I'm sure for the hardcore fans, they will hate it a lot. And again, I just think some of the critiques or criticisms that they have, maybe it's just based on primarily race and pacing, I guess. And I'm not down for
Mhm.
that. Pacing, okay, sure. Um, but yeah, so I wanted to get your thoughts on the overall ending. Where do you think it'll go? We see the formation of the rings, right? So I want to get your thoughts on that
Mhm.
whole thing.
Yeah, I was a little concerned because I was like, the show is called The Rings of Power, and we didn't see it for like 7 episodes, and then the final episode, they did actually craft the ring, so I was happy about that. I kinda want to see Sauron craft the One Ring, but I guess they're saving that for probably 2nd season if it gets renewed. Um, so it was cool. I actually thought it was interesting that they used the mithril to craft the One Rings because they never like go into the process of it in the books. They just say like, "Oh yeah, the elves crafted the rings," and Sauron kind of like influenced them to make the rings. So yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I wonder like where what goes next. Like they kind of cherry pick some of the lore a bit in this show, and they kind of make it their own like compressed version of Lord of the Silmarillion. Um, I did like some of the bits of lore that they did use. Like I did like Elendil, like he explains like his name. Like his name is well, it has two meanings. It has a star lover, but also means friend of the elves, which I thought is interesting because the elves are actually called the people of the stars. So it's like kind of like a dual sided meaning. But yeah, I think overall, if I had done the show, honestly, I would have delved a little deeper into lore. I actually would have made this about the War of Wrath with Morgoth, because I feel like Sauron is such a focus in Lord of the Rings media. Um, there's so many books and so many Tolkien notes. I feel like they focus so much on like the same story over again. So I would have like went deeper and say like, oh well, maybe let's talk more about like the origins, like Middle Earth and stuff. Um, but overall, I thought it wasn't a bad show. I think it was enjoyable. For me, it was really enjoyable to watch. Actually, the pacing maybe might have been a little too slow or too fast at sometimes, but I think I followed along pretty well. The characters they kind of seem like almost like watered down versions of the main characters in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but I thought that wasn't bad. I think they're their own separate thing. Like you said, like, you kind of have to treat this as its own thing. And obviously, like with anything, like even like like the Harry Potter series, they're gonna change a lot of things in movies and media. So you kind of have to treat this as its own separate entity. But for me, If I had to rate this, I'd probably get it a 8 out of 10. How would you rate it?
That's so funny because I would give it a 8 out of 10 too. Yeah, I had fun with the show. And I for sure I think like the costuming, everything felt very authentic, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think
Visual
that's
design was amazing.
yeah, and I think that's great. I think novices to Lord of the Rings will actually really like this show. I think people who are more experienced in criticizing the show will probably criticize it in certain character developments and pacing structure problems. Um, but I think for the most part, it is what it is. I wonder if we'll get a season two. I'm pretty sure they spent so much money on it. We still have to figure out what
Mhm.
happened with Isildur, right? I'm pretty sure he's going to go down a journey of character development to be that Isildur we all know from the movies.
Mhm. And
Um,
Gandalf, like,
Gandalf.
what his next steps are.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, I wonder if he'll ever meet what's that guy? Saruman? I wonder if he'll meet him somehow in like
Mhm.
one of the
Yeah, because there's
seasons.
actually, 5 of the wizards, they're called the Istari. They're the Maiar, they actually come to Middle Earth to stop Sauron, so I wonder if yeah, we'll actually, like, see, like, the other ones. And what's up with, like, Galadriel, like, what's her next steps, like, as far as, like, will we actually see, like, Sauron, like, gathering, like, orcs and stuff? Do they go to war with the elves? What's going on with the dwarves too? So I think they could do a lot if they wanted to do a second season. There's a lot of room, and there's a lot of like stuff from the books they could pull from. Um, but yeah, I think for this show, it wasn't bad overall. So yeah, if you guys are like into lore, into fantasy, I'd say check it out. And even if you hated the show, um, I mean, it was still cool. You gotta respect at least the visual style and the character building, world building of it.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully, I would like to see a season two. To be honest with you, I want a lot more. I think this is a great entryway for me as well. But yeah, guys, this is our review. If you like this video, please don't talk shit in the comments, and also, please check out our other reviews. We do Handmaid's Tale on Andor every week, constantly, right? So that's gonna end in later on. Anyway, Dylan, take us away.
Well, yeah, we actually have another fantasy review coming up this week, House of the Dragon, funny enough. So if you guys are big fantasy lore fans, you want to check that out, coming this Sunday. Yeah, you can check us out on, of course, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, and our Instagram pages as well. We post clips of our podcast every day. And you can check out our other playlists as well. We do Star Wars, Marvel, so many other content that we have planned for this month. And it's spooky season, so we have a lot of Halloween-themed episodes coming along. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. And until then, thanks for having lunch with us.
See you guys.